Welcome back to our module on personal effectiveness. So hopefully you did okay in the integration task. And what we're going to do now is build on the getting things done session that we looked at before. This is working on something called Zen to Done by Leo Babauta, who was familiar with the getting things done and felt that it missed a couple of points, and so developed a kind of another system to try to build on the basics of getting things done. So what it'll do is it'll help you get a little bit more detail around the getting things done, and then add a couple of dimensions to what we talked about in the previous session. So he has a number of habits that he identified, practices for us to develop. And we're just going to go through those. And maybe you can kind of be thinking for yourself, am I already doing that? Or do I need to add that one? And what would work best for me? So the first one he calls collect. The habit, ubiquitous capture. So capturing stuff everywhere. It's the moment that you have any ideas or projects or stuff comes into your head, get it out of your head as soon as possible and down into something. That can be an app on your smartphone, which is tied into one of these systems, or it can be just in your notebook and a bit of paper, but make it as a way that works best for you. It doesn't have to be high tech, can just be on a bit of paper. The important thing is that you clear your mind. You get it down somewhere and your mind can relax and go, oh, okay, it's there. I can go back and find it later. And then you can come back and be present with what's really going on in the moment. Number 2, process. The habit is to make quick decisions on things in your inbox and don't put them off. So when it comes in, you're looking at it, and as we talked about in getting things done, if you read the email, don't just leave it there and then move on to the next one. At that moment, stay with it and ask yourself, can I do it in 2 minutes? If you can, do it. Or do I need to file it, move it somewhere else? Or do I need to put it on my to-do list? So every time you meet one of these issues, deal with it there and then. Face everything, avoid nothing. Deal with it there and then rather than just let it sit there. Because stuff you let sit there kind of piles up, gets longer and longer, the list gets longer and longer, and it gets much harder to actually gather the courage to deal with it. And then it gathers dust, and then it kind of gradually falls away. But more importantly, it really drains energy from you. When you're aware, your mind is aware that there's all of this stuff waiting in there that hasn't been properly processed. So really get on and process things, and it clears stuff up again, and again makes you more available and present. Number 3, plan. So set for yourself the most important tasks for your week and for your day. What that helps you to do is to prioritize. Of all of the things that you could be doing, what are really the most important ones? And then you've got your list for the week, and then each day sit down and go, okay, these are the things I want to get done this week. What are the most important ones for today? And make it not a huge list. Keep it small so that you can be sure that you can get those things done. And the first thing you do, I would suggest in the beginning of the day, is get those most important tasks done and out of the way. And that'll give you a sense of completion, a sense of achievement. You'll know you'll have them done, and then you can move on to other things. So create those lists and make sure that you actually accomplish them. The next is to do. Do one task at a time without distraction. So once you've decided what you're going to focus on that and get it done, and then it's cleared off and the next one comes in line. So it allows us also, particularly in these times where we're doing a lot of conference calling, we're on maybe phone conference calls, or we're on Skype calls, or some of these other platforms with multiple videos. I would bet that a lot of people, because I do it myself sometimes, are busy working on other stuff on these calls. And that can be okay, but what you notice that it does is it takes energy out of the call. It takes energy out of the thing that you're trying to do together, because everyone's busy doing other things at the same time. And it's just make sure it's a conscious choice, that you're really focused on the thing you're doing now, because where you put your attention is where you will give energy. So if you're on a call and you're trying to, there's important discussions going on and you're busy processing your emails, then your attention isn't on that collective context, and you're taking your energy out of it and putting it on something else. And that will make a difference to the quality of the discussion in the meeting that you're having. So just make sure you're making a conscious choice about where you focus your attention and your energy. Number 5, simple, trusted system. So make sure you have a system that's going to work for you, where you can have your checklists, your to-dos, categorized maybe in these different contexts that we were talking about, like when you're behind your desk or with your phone or with a certain person, and that it's something that you can rely on. Because what's really important in these systems is that your mind knows that nothing's getting lost, that you've captured it somewhere. So if it's scraps of paper, unless you're a very disciplined filer, there's a risk that they're going to get scattered and lost somewhere. And your mind will worry about that. If you've captured it on your smartphone, for example, and you've synced your smartphone up to your laptop and that's synced to some kind of thing in the cloud, then there's a little chance that you're going to lose it. So just make sure you have a system that works for you, because the purpose is to make sure your mind can relax and you can stay present with what's going on. 6, organize. The habit is finding a place for everything. So make sure that, the thing that comes into your inbox or the letter that comes in through the post box, that there's a place for it. If it's not going in the trash, then make sure there's a place for it. If there's no place for things, you'll notice maybe you're in a rush, you're trying to get to other things, and you'll just leave it somewhere. And that pile will start to build up, and it's the pile of stuff that has no place. And that will not, that'll be a pile that'll grow, and it won't be fun to go and deal with it at some point, so it'll just stay there. So make sure that when it comes in, if you come across something that doesn't have a place, in that moment, create a place for it and put it there. And that'll be sure that, because there'll be other things coming in that'll need to go in that place later. That'll make sure it gets put somewhere rather than become a kind of a homeless item floating around somewhere that eventually gets lost. Habit 7, review your system and goals weekly. So this is how you make sure that things don't get lost and that your to-dos are relevant to where you're at the moment. So imagine that you're clearing your inbox, you add things to your to-do list. If you come back to that every week, you look through it and go, okay, what are the things that really need attention now? And you look through all the projects and to-dos, and as you're looking at a project, you're, okay, what are the projects in this project? What are the actions that need doing for this project this week, for example, your most important tasks? So it helps you to prioritize it. But most importantly, the fact that you're doing that review allows your mind to relax, because it means that to-do that you put on your list is going to be checked every so often. So the mind knows it's not going to be lost. If you lose the discipline of your weekly review, then your mind is going to start worrying, and you'll find it harder to put things on your to-do list, because you know that you may not actually get to see them for a while because you've lost your discipline of your review. It doesn't have to take you long, the review. It's like 15 minutes or so. And it's an important discipline because it makes sure that you know that when you put something on your to-do list, you're going to come back to it and check whether it needs attention now. Number 8, simplify. The habit is reduce your goals and tasks to the essentials. So sometimes, we attempted to put everything on it. There's a discipline around asking ourselves, does this really need to go on the to-do list? Is this really something that needs my attention? Or is it just the kind of general thing and I'm using my to-do list as an excuse to get it out the way? So keep it clean. Keep the to-do lists and the structure clean. That'll make them more approachable for you, more open for you to engage with. Otherwise, it starts building up with stuff that's not really relevant and doesn't become easy for you to access. So create a discipline around simplicity. And, if it's something that doesn't kind of quite belong on your to-do list, but you might want to go to it later, then create a file which is, the incubation folder. Maybe we'll do that later, some point in the future. Like I have in my folder, I have learn Chinese. Do something later. I really love to learn Chinese one day, but if I put it on a to-do list, it's kind of hanging around and it may not be immediate, so it's on my some point in the future folder and it's still there, but and so my mind can relax because it's there, but it's not clogging up my more immediate to-do issues. Number 9, routine. Set and keep routines. And this works for most people. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but the importance of creating ritual in a way. And it's like, okay, every Monday morning, first thing, I'm going to do my weekly review. That'll take me 15 minutes or so. I'm going to, first of all, first thing in the day, I'm going to process my most important tasks for the day. Or maybe you prefer to kind of process your inbox first, the mails that have come in overnight. But it helps to create a rhythm. Somehow our mind and our body responds well to cyclical rituals and rhythms and knows, okay, now I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. And it helps us avoid stress with all the information, relax and stay present with things. On the Tuesdays and the Thursdays, I'm going to go down to the gym end of the morning before lunch. And you get into that rhythm. And it keeps the discipline there somehow. If you're kind of, I'm going to go to the gym a couple of times a week. And then you get to the end of Thursday and you're going, oh, no, I haven't really kind of managed to find time for it. So block those moments into your agenda. Try to create a pattern, where your system gets used to it. Oh, yeah, I go to the gym now. So it becomes an automatic action rather than you're trying to compare it in terms of priorities to finishing that project or working on this. Whereas in the longer term, it's an important thing to do to be working on your physical vitality. So think about how you can create more rhythm, ritual, and routine into your daily and weekly practices. And number 10, which feels like a slightly different quality to the rest, Leo calls find your passion. Seek work for which you're passionate. So the habit to form here is to constantly seek things about which you're passionate. See if you can make a career out of them when you find them. So ask yourself, as you're kind of thinking about, okay, am I going to take on this project or am I going to work on this? When you contemplate that, when you kind of tune into doing that, how does your body react? Does it give you energy? Does it kind of lift you up? Or does it kind of start to drain energy and you drop down a bit? And maybe reconnect to, when I did this thing about my life purpose or what I wanted to be working on longer term, or start of the year, I created some year goals. Does this line up with that? Because it's easy to get distracted by stuff. There's so many possibilities. Somebody comes up, they're really enthusiastic and passionate about this thing, and they say, hey, would you come and work with me on this? And they're a friend, and you don't want to disappoint them, so you get into it. But suddenly you find you're caught up in doing something that really isn't part of what you're here to do. That's not on target with your own passion, what you care about, the kind of longer term goals that you've set yourself. Doesn't mean that you can't change those goals and be flexible, but it's a discipline or a practice of checking in the whole time for, is what I'm choosing to do now, does that really feed my passion? Does that really give me energy? Is that something that's going to be fun, and really allow me to explore different parts of myself, to shine and bring everything I have to my work in the world? And trust that if you're doing that, then you will be able to make a career out of it. There's a lovely quote, and I think it was one of the old Greek philosophers originally, who said, where your passion meets a need in the world, that's where you'll find your vocation. Where your passion meets a need in the world, that's where you'll find your vocation. So being conscious of how what you're being offered relates to your passion, and then finding a need in the world where you can express that, you can be sure that will attract people, that will attract resources. And it may not be something anybody's thought of before. Maybe a career in something completely new. But if you're passionate about it and there's a need in the world for it, then you can be sure it'll attract interest, people, and resources. And you'll be able to make your living doing something that you care about. So that's the end of this session, looking at the Zen to Done. Again, for yourself, go back and take a look at the different practices. Think about which ones can you start picking up immediately. Do it as soon as you can. Don't put it off. Start to work through some of these and integrate them into your life. Practice them and then share with each other about what seems to work. See if other fellow students have tips in this area, and collectively see if we can become more effective at making a positive impact in the world.